Hello. Thank you for joining us to review the basics of funding for student organizations and programs. Before we start talking about how student organizations are funded, we need to start a few steps back and talk about how the university is funded. The university's funding can get extremely complex and detailed, but the simplistic overview is that Portland State is funded through a few primary sources: the tuition and fees a student pays, money from state taxes, grants, and donations. Portland State is considered part of the Oregon state government, so any money that comes into the university becomes state money. This is important to understand in our next module on spending. The majority of student organizations will receive some type of funding from the university. Here is how it is funneled to you. The university collects tuition and fees. The money is then distributed into buckets, each with a specified purpose. Generally, the funds that student organizations receive are from incidental fees, otherwise known as student fees. There are a portion of the fees you pay in addition to tuition. The Student Fee Committee allocates all student fee money, and their subcommittee, the Organization Budget Council, allocates directly to student organizations recognized by SALP. The Student Fee Committee is a group of 8 students. 7 of these students are elected by the student body in spring, and 1 is appointed by the ASPSU president. The Student Fee Committee must abide by the ASPSU Constitution, SFC guidelines, and all state laws when allocating money. The Student Fee Committee allocates money to a number of organizations and funding committees on campus, including the council that funds student organizations. Student media, Student Leaders for Service, student-run services, and the Portland State Programming Board are directly funded by the SFC. For a list of organizations and departments funded directly by the Student Fee Committee, you can visit the ASPSU website under SFC. The OBC is a student-run funding committee that grants budgets to recognize student organizations within SALP. The OBC does not fund forming, affiliates, or student services. The OBC requires student leaders of recognized student organizations to participate in an in-person or online training. They will communicate any requirements to the student organizations. The OBC is responsible for voting on their guidelines, determining how and what they fund within the parameters of the SFC guidelines, university policies, and the laws. Besides receiving state funding through the SFC or OBC, student programs and organizations may also choose to bring in their own funds through ticket sales to events, fundraisers, or membership dues. What happens to this money? Well, it depends on how a group is funded. Let's start with groups that receive no state funding, such as an affiliate and forming student organizations. This is easy. The organization can open its own account at a financial institution outside the university. It is up to the group leaders to decide who has access to the account. If the group is ever granted funding from the SFC or OBC, they will need to close the outside bank account. Organizations that are directly funded by the SFC or OBC, and remember, these funds are state funds, cannot open separate accounts. They must spend their out-of-state budget and deposit revenue in the same account. Any money that they bring in is considered state money, and it rolls back to the state if it is not spent by the end of the fiscal year, June 30th. Any student organization or program may solicit donations. Donations are gifts from individuals or businesses freely given in exchange for a tax write-off. Money in exchange for advertising, or a table, or services is not considered a donation. Before accepting or soliciting donations, the group must work with the SALP advisor. The donations will be deposited in a separate account for the group's use. Student programs and organizations should also be aware of other funding committees from which they can request funds. The Speakers Board allocates funds to bring speakers to campus for events open to all students, and the SET, Student Educational Trust, allocates funds for students to present at conferences.